I just got done watching Hocus Pocus 2. This is the long-awaited sequel that brings the Sanderson sisters to modern-day Salem after 3 young women accidentally bring them back and must figure out how to stop the child-hungry witches from wreaking havoc on the world. Again, everyone is back when it comes down to Billy and the Sanderson sisters themselves, and Hocus Pocus is a damn classic Halloween movie, which is funny when you go back and look at the box office of that movie, because I know a lot of people have actually had this discussion. Why is this movie not in theaters? Because it would probably make a lot of money. And there's an argument to be had there that Hocus Pocus 2 probably would make some damn good solid money, but there is the conversation of it being on Disney+. Plus the original movie actually lost Disney around $16 to $20 million at the theater, so I understand why this is coming out here. But this movie is actually surprisingly good. A lot of the times when we get these long-awaited sequels, sometimes they turn out like a Top Gun Maverick when they're amazing and arguably even better than the original. And sometimes you get, a Jurassic World, which is good and fun, but not as good as the original. And sometimes you get a spiritual sequel like this, and it's absolutely awful. Hocus Pocus 2, I don't think is as good as the original, because the originals had that classical cult status for the last, 10, 12 years of itself, specifically in the way that it is upon our generations, in the way that my generation very much grew up with this movie, and generations will continue to grow up with Hocus Pocus. But Hocus Pocus 2 is in that category of, this is a really good sequel, and it's surprisingly good because I actually think none of the trailers really gave me any hope. I thought they looked fun, but for the most part, it felt a little cheap. It felt like they were just doing this to do it to make content for Disney+, and I'm very happy to say that Hocus Pocus 2 is a damn good surprise. So I do want to hear your guys' thoughts, though, down below. Are you a fan of the original Hocus Pocus? Are you excited for the sequel? Do you think it needed a sequel? Because I'll tell you right now, I think this is a very good definitive ending to the entire world of Hocus Pocus. So let me know after you've watched this if you think we should be getting another film, and also make sure to hit that like and subscribe button. If you love talking movies, you are certainly in the right place, and I'm very happy to have you here along for the ride. And with every movie review, the one thing I love to start talking about is the pros. I love start talking about the good. So the best things about this is, of course, the Sanderson sisters. They come in here and they nail it. They come back like it's never been. Like, they literally played them, 18 years ago, and now they're coming back all this time. It feels so fresh, and it feels regular. I mean, Bette Midler as Winifred, great. Sarah Jessica Parker as Sarah Sanderson, I love her. I think she's so fun. And Kathy Najimy is just delightful. I think these three continue to give that spellbound energy that they had in the original, and I was very happy with that. Nothing ever felt phoned in. It just felt like it was perfectly at the right time to bring these characters back. And the other thing I actually do want to add when it comes down to a directing and writing standpoint, a lot of the times when they do these type of movies, when you go back and rewatch the original Hocus Pocus, those characters are not in it like 24/7. They are side characters. No matter how you advertise the movie, they are side characters. And I was very worried we were going to do a Jack Sparrow thing here within the sequel where, hey, the other characters aren't in here, let's make Jack Sparrow the main character, which was what happened in, of course, Pirates of the Caribbean 4 and 5. Well, 5 was better than 4. 4 was not a good movie. Hocus Pocus doesn't make that mistake. In fact, Hocus Pocus actually continues to keep them as side characters. They have a whole nice subplot, but they are not the main characters. But with that said, you have to have charming characters that you do want to follow along and want to support, and that's where we have Whitney Peak, who plays Becca, the main character of this entire story. And I loved her. I thought she was so charming and delightful. Of course, her best friend, played by Belisa Escobedo, played by Izzy, really enjoyed her, and I think their chemistry was wonderful. And then Lilia Buckingham, who plays Cassie as well. Those three all together bring this wonderful delightfulness of friendship. And there is a little bit of a diverge between at least one of them that they're trying to mend, and it really is a nice parallel to, of course, the Sanderson sisters themselves and seeing where they had come from. Adding in there some of the other nice little cast members in here is Sam Richardson, who plays Gilbert. I thought he was a lot of fun every time he came around. Doug Jones is Billy. It was great to see him come back in here, and I think Billy is one of the more higher energy parts. I wish we got a little bit more of him in the film, because he really just has a subplot going on with Gilbert throughout the movie, but he is fun, and Tony Hale is delightful. I love when he shows up in these things. even though I'll talk about his subplots in a second and certain subplots throughout this film, definitely the two big pros is the performances from the Sanderson sisters and the performances from the group of best friends who end up releasing them back into Salem themselves. And do I think this movie will be a cult classic Halloween thing that people watch every single year? No, because the original's still there. And the original had this charm that I feel like is only around in that time period when that film was made. Now this is more in a modern day setting. It has that modern day feel to it, and it plays on top of that. But I think this is a nice companion piece that many people will be able to dive in and enjoy themselves, because some of the jokes in here are really funny and they add to the horror, and they even have some of those nice little horror moments that the original one had. It feels like one of those movies that we just don't get nowadays when it comes down to like family-friendly horror films. And I'm really happy to see that Hocus Pocus 2 continues that, because the way I view this movie is that this isn't a movie that, going in, I was like, okay, the number one thing is I watched the first one right beforehand, and then I turned on the second one to see how am I going to feel about this. And again, it just felt like a nice companion piece between the two. I didn't sit there and be like, oh my god, they betrayed the characters like this, because in fact, they give a little bit of background context to the Sanderson sisters before the entire witch thing. In fact, we actually go to the past. We see a little bit of that. We even see a character played by Waddingham, who's been amazing in Ted Lasso lately, but she plays a character that is very important to these sisters. Their bonding. How did they become where they were, and how did they get pushed to that point? There's some nice messages and thematics that, again, kids will be able to grab from there, but it adds an essence that when you go and watch the original Hocus Pocus, it's going to add some more layers to that. And in fact, I actually wish they would have touched on that entire moment a little bit more, because I think that is some of the best aspects, is the opening of this movie when it does center on the past. And it's very interesting and fabulous to see that, because we don't have any of that, and sometimes they can ruin characters, but in this fact, it actually just enhanced them and ties all the way up until the ending, because the ending of this movie is surprisingly emotional and very conclusive to this overall story, and it feels like a good arc overall, and again, a good message and thematics that can layer out for kids, families, and just people in general. But I do keep mentioning one thing. You know, we have the great performances, we have this nice little fun story, we have the fun horror moments. There's a couple things in here when it comes down to subplots, and this film is longer than the original, which is fine to have. But I would have rather the length gone towards, again, like those flashback sequences like I mentioned, and giving more character development, and even a little bit more character development between the three main friends, while I really believed in them overall, because, again, they are friends, and they spend a lot of time together in here, and they have great chemistry. There's this added bonus in there that I wish, like, one of the friends is not really friends with them, like they are and they aren't. There's something in there that I wish they would have focused in on a little bit more when it became that friendship and mending it all and kind of trying to figure out how that's all going to work. But then there's this other subplot. And the Sanderson sisters have a lot of fun going about and seeing all the new technological advances throughout Salem itself. And some of those work, and some of them just kind of annoy me. And it's something that a lot of movies do nowadays like this, where it's like, oh, an Alexa, let's make a joke about that. Oh, a Roomba, let's make a joke about that. And some of it works, like, really well. And those ones maybe are bad examples, because I actually thought those ones were funny, but there's certain ones in there. And there's also this entire dancing sequence, which is fun, but it goes on a little bit too long. And same thing going to, as well, Tony Hale's character, the mayor, never really added much to the story. Like, we cut back to him a lot, and the few times we see it, funny. But the amount of times they keep doing this running gag that is funny at first, it just gets a little bit old. And I would have actually rather had more, of course, story than gags. And I think that's one thing to remember, is that the original Hocus Pocus is just a really good family-friendly horror film. It has the creeps, it has the scares, it has the witches, it has the magic. But it also has some jokes. But the jokes are layered out in a way where it doesn't feel like we have to make you laugh. And that's something that I feel like this movie sometimes misses and lacks. Even though it is a really good companion piece, it's the only thing that I do think holds this movie back from me going, oh my god, this is the perfect sequel to Hocus Pocus. It's just a surprisingly really good sequel that I think a lot of Hocus Pocus fans are going to enjoy. That's my thoughts. Hocus Pocus 2 is an enjoyable companion piece to the original. In fact, it's a really damn good sequel to that film. It's surprisingly good. It doesn't feel cheap. It has a good budget to itself. The visual effects and the magic really do hold up. I like some of the practical effects that they decided to use here, and the sisters feel like they never missed a beat. I like the new characters they introduce in here, and in fact, I think some of the jokes in here are great. I like that this had some horror moments, and again, watching it back to back with the original movie is a delight, and a lot of fans are going to make this a part of their new tradition when they do go back to rewatch Hocus Pocus. But the one thing I have with this film is it just has a little bit too many subplots, a couple jokes that go on a little bit too hard, and some jokes that maybe 20 years from now are not going to hold up. Where you do look at the original film, and almost all of those jokes still hold up to today. So with that said, I'm going to give Hocus Pocus 2 a B. Never been one of the closest people to Hocus Pocus. It's not like this is like a charming character that I love this franchise so much. I enjoy the first one, and I actually really like it. It's a classic. But when it comes out of this one, I think hardcore fans of Hocus Pocus are probably going to enjoy this a little bit more than I did, but you might find yourself having the same issues that I had. Let me know down below what your guys' thoughts are. If you're interested in seeing movies early, make sure to head on over to Sanderson Films as well. And of course, thank you so much again for watching this. So of course, until next time, stay classy.